NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play.
What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bringing the latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, so it's been a couple weeks since my last NetsBoy episode, but I really feel that now is the best time to do an episode, which is why I've kind of waited a little bit because during this current stretch for the Nets, because they didn't advance at the knockout stage of the in-season tournament, the games are very spaced out. As a matter of fact, this is a stretch right now of 5 days in which the Nets are not going to play a game. They don't have a game until Friday. And then after that, they have a couple more days before they have another game. And I believe they play something like maybe 3 games in the next 8 days or 10 days or something like that. So it is really spaced out over the next couple days for this Nets team. And I just kind of said, you know what? This is the time to do an episode. But also, because we're about 1/4 through the NBA season. Actually, we are. The first quarter of the NBA season is over, and which this Nets team is 10-14. And honestly, I don't know anyone who really expected the Nets to be that good. I mean, I'll be honest, I actually did. I've touched upon it a bunch of times going into this season. And I said, I feel like this team is too good and how this team is not going to be bad enough for what the goal is, which was to tank and get a top draft pick. And sure enough, for maybe the first time in the history of NetsBoy appears to look like he knows what he's talking about. Because right now, a fourth through the NBA season, the Nets, like I said, are 10-14 and are currently tied for the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. They are right in the thick of what would be the play-in right now if this season were to end. And look, it brings up a very interesting discussion and a very, very interesting situation for this Nets team. What should this Nets team do moving forward? Because right now, the way I look at it, this team is in limbo. So, look, the way I see it, Sean Marks and the Nets can go one of 3 routes, right? They can stay packed with the team they have, hope they continue to get development from the young players like Cam Thomas and Jalen Wilson and Noah Clowney when he comes back from injury. Maybe Tariq Whitehead has another moment where he looks like he knows how to play basketball. You know, you can continue with that route and hope for the best and be a very competitive team and compete for one of the play-in spots and, make the play-in and have a shot for the playoffs and then most likely lose in the first round. That's one option. Then the Nets could go the aggressive option, the go for it option. They could say, hey, maybe we could actually take a shot at a run in the playoffs this year. Because once you get in the playoffs, you never know what could happen if there's an injury or things fall your way with a capable matchup and maybe a team gets upset. You never know. And maybe the Nets decide to be buyers and they try to go out and acquire a player by the trade deadline to try to complement the current core that the Nets have. That's an option. And then the final option is that the Nets completely ignore the success that they've had all year and they just say, we had a plan going into this and we're going to stick to it and blow up the team and trade away all the veterans. Those are the 3 options this Nets team has. And I think, and I'm being truthfully honest, the only wrong decision in my mind is to stay packed. I'm going to be very truthful here. I think the worst thing this Nets team can do is nothing over the next month or so as we get closer to the trade deadline. right? If they do nothing and they continue to try to just hope that this team could achieve something, it's just you're just gonna stay in limbo. You're just gonna stay as this okay team. And okay, maybe you can grab a big name free agent next season, but let's be honest, there's not a lot of big game changing free agents available next season. I mean, there are some, and I can touch upon that in a second, that could come, but may not take the team to the next level. But then you could go and look at the other route and say, let's go get a player. But the truth is, who's really available that's going to make that much of a difference? Like, we all know about the rumors about Giannis Antetokounmpo, but I've said this before. If the Nets go after Giannis, it's not going to be in the middle of the season. It's going to be over the off season because I don't see Giannis, unless something crazy happens, demanding a trade in the middle of the season. He's not Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. All right, like he's not, or James Harden. He's not one of those three morons who just halfway through a year just give up on their team. I don't see that happening. Doesn't mean it can't happen because I don't know what exactly is going on with Milwaukee. They've seeming to get their act together. They're currently climbing in the standings and they seem like they know what they're doing. But there could be still a situation where Giannis says, you know what, I want out. But unless something like that happens, I don't know if there's a player out there really worth the Nets going after and getting. Now, there are players that could make this team better, and there are some moves that I think could make this Nets team go from a play-in team to a true playoff team, a team that would be like, a 5-6 seed, but that still doesn't mean that they're going to be good enough to compete for a championship. Like there's moves out there, but I don't know if there's a really big splash. So the reality is, I hate to say it, but I think the best choice is to stick to the original plan. To trade away your veterans, acquire more assets, and just suck. Play hard, but suck. Finish with a bottom five record in the Eastern Conference. Get a chance at a top five draft pick in this upcoming draft, but still developing young, talented players like Cam Thomas and Jalen Wilson and Noah Clowney. That seems like the best choice. And it's hard to say because this Nets team is fun to watch. And look, if I'm Sean Marks, I'm going to be very honest. I don't know how much I'm really going to do that, even though I think it's the best choice, if that makes any sense, because my fandom is getting in the way. My brain is just like, I can't validate the idea of just trying to make this team as bad as possible to get a better draft pick. Even though I think long term it's the right choice, I just don't know. So I'm going to be honest. I've been trying to figure out moves that could improve this Nets team, but not hinder their chances for the future. And I think I came up with one. And I think that's how I'm going to end this episode. And I think it could work. Okay. So hear me out here. All right. This is a trade that I've alluded to in the past. Um, and I'm probably going to be talking a lot about it over the next couple episodes as we get closer to the trade deadline, which is about a month and a half away. It's a move that just, in my mind, makes so much sense for both teams involved, the Nets and the other team. And I think it is that good compromise of competing this year, but not, affecting the future. And that is the Nets trading for Brandon Ingram from the New Orleans Pelicans. I think the circumstances now are the best it will ever be for the Nets to go out there and get Brandon Ingram. The Pelicans have made it clear they didn't want to resign him. They don't know what they were going to do with this team in the future, but the one thing they do know is he's a free agent at the end of the year. And the Pelicans have one of the worst records in the NBA right now and are not going to be competing for a playoff spot in that tough Western Conference. So it makes loads of sense that the Pelicans are going to trade Brandon Ingram. And it's been loads of speculation. Like, he's probably the biggest player to watch for by the trade deadline that is probably going to be traded for that very reason. The Pelicans are going to try to do something and get something back because they don't want to lose them for nothing. But the Pelicans also look at their roster and they say, well, wait a minute. We're only one of the worst teams because we've had unbelievably unfortunate injuries, right? Zion Williamson has missed almost the whole year. CJ McCollum missed a lot of time. Like, Ingram himself right now is out. Like, Ingram's out right now with an ankle injury right now. So they just had loads of unfortunate injuries. And that's why in that competitive Western Conference, they're one of the worst teams. But they can look at their roster and say, well, we're committed to a lot of players beyond this year. And I think we could still compete because just last year they were a playoff team. So they're looking at this. What move could the Pelicans make in which they could get better for next year or get something that could help them build on for next year? And that's where I think the Nets come in perfectly. If I'm the Nets, I'm offering Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and a lottery protected first round draft pick for Brandon Ingram. And if you're the Pelicans, I think you do that trade. Because right off the bat, you're getting Brandon Ingram's replacement, Cam Johnson, who's having a career year, averaging over 18 points a game, shooting over 45% from three. All right, shooting, I think, might be shooting over 50% from three, close to 50% from three, having just a all-star caliber year. Like he could be an all-star. I don't think he will, but you can make an argument that Cam Johnson is playing at an all-star level this year. Well, that's Brandon Ingram's replacement, and at a fraction of what it would cost to re-sign Ingram if you're the Pelicans. Cam Johnson signed for 2 more years after this year, and his contract's what, $24 million a year? So you get his replacement from a productive player who's signed at a cheaper contract that you would have if you went after Ingram, who you can pair up and partner up still with Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum and keep building and competing over the next couple years in the Western Conference. And then you bring in Dorian Finney-Smith, who does have a player's option at the end of this year, but you could still try to either flip him or you could try to re-sign him. And who doesn't want a 3-and-D veteran player like Dorian Finney-Smith? And then finally, if they got a lottery protected first round draft pick, it gives a compensation for if things don't work out for the Pelicans, even after the trade, and they still aren't very good. They have another draft pick that they can rebuild for or flip for something else to rebuild. So if you're the Pelicans, it makes loads of sense. And if you're the Nets, the reason why you would do this trade is really, in my mind, quite simple. Brandon Ingram is one of the best scorers in the league. He really is. He's a very versatile 3-way scorer. He can beat you on the dribble. He can hit the mid-range jump shot. He can knock down the 3-point shot. He's a versatile defender. He's an okay rebounder. He's just never been able to really have, I feel like, a consistent enough team around him to let him be the star player that he really could be. Because if you think about this, the teams he's played on, with the Pelicans, he's always kind of by himself because Zion Williamson's always hurt. And I don't think it was a coincidence that last year, with Zion being relatively healthy, that the Pelicans did so well and Brandon Ingram did well. And then if you go beyond that, he was very young when he was with the Lakers and he was just learning. And we all know that, the Lakers, he was the main focus point of the Anthony Davis trade way back. So I just look at Brandon Ingram and I think a Cam Thomas, Brandon Ingram 1-2 punch might be one of the best scoring duos in the NBA. It just fits, right? Because one of the biggest problems with Cam Thomas has always been that when teams start doubling him or they're blitzing him and they're making him rush a little bit, he still sometimes makes the wrong decision. He'll turn the ball over. He'll make the wrong pass. He'll take a tough, unnecessary shot that just won't be good. And it's a problem. But if Brandon Ingram is on this team and out there with Cam Thomas, I think he's going to see a lot less double teams because you're not going to leave Brandon Ingram wide open, who's just as gifted of a scorer as Cam Thomas. He really is. May not do it in the same type of flashy way that Cam Thomas does, but 3-level scorer wise, just like Thomas, he's up there. And vice versa. If you got Cam Thomas out there, are you going to ever double team Brandon Ingram? I don't think so because you're not going to leave Cam Thomas wide open to just make and take big shots down the stretch. So I just see it as just alone with those two players makes this Nets team go from a play-in team to a true playoff team. And if you're only giving up Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith, and you still have Dennis Schroeder, you still have Nick Claxton, you still have Zaire Williams, you still have Jalen Wilson, you still have Noah Clowney, you still have Day'Ron Sharpe, you still have Shake Milton. That team is would be competing for the 4 or 5 seed in the East. Absolutely. Just that team. I really believe it. I think that takes this team to the next level. And the fact is, if all you're really giving up is one lottery protected draft pick and Cam Johnson, who, look, as good as he is, we've discussed he might be someone that the Nets have talked about trading because he has an all-time high trade value. Same thing with Dorian Finney-Smith. He's a veteran. He'll probably be flipped and traded at some point. You're not blowing up the young core. You're not, giving away young players for players that won't work. Like, it just works. And I also will want to say this about Brandon Ingram. If the Nets trade for him, they will have his bird rights, meaning that they could go over the salary cap to re-sign him. And why is that important? Because by trading away Cam Johnson in the trade, they're shedding off his contract. Ben Simmons' contract will be off the books. Dennis Schroeder's contract will be off the books. I just mentioned that Cam Johnson's will be off the books. All these contracts will be off the books. Dorian Finney-Smith, Bojan Bogdanovic. We forget about him because he's been hurt all this year. All that money is off the books. And after this trade, the Nets could have close to $100 million, $80 to $100 million of salary cap space. Do you know what moves the Nets could make with that type of salary cap space? And the best part about it is, once again, Brandon Ingram was traded for, so the Nets would have his bird rights, meaning they could go after other free agents like a Lauri Markkanen, and they could bring him aboard, and then they could sign Dennis Schroeder, they can extend Cam Thomas, and then they still would be able to re-sign Brandon Ingram because they have his bird rights. So by doing a trade now and trading for Brandon Ingram, they have the flexibility to do all that, and it won't affect the salary cap. And yeah, I said Lauri Markkanen because that's a free agent that I know will almost certainly enter free agency, and he's somebody that I think could really help this Nets team. But it could be anyone. It could be a situation, dare I say this, where the Nets do go after Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they just offer loads of draft picks, but because they have the cap space, they maybe won't need to include many players in the trade. Or if they really need to, they could sign and trade Brandon Ingram, right? If you have Brandon Ingram and if the Bucks insist on a big name player, if they want to trade Giannis and not just get like 6 or 7 draft picks like the Nets could offer, that's another reason why you have Ingram. You can sign him to an extension and you can sign and trade him in the package to bring in Giannis Antetokounmpo. So there's just so many options you have by Brandon Ingram. And the way I look at it is you're not mortgaging the future to bring him in, and he just fits. He just fits. But the Nets probably won't do that because, that just seems too logical. And that doesn't seem like it's something that Sean Marks and the Nets would do. They're probably going to choose that, like, pretty much right the ship path, steer the ship straight, and maybe they might trade like Dorian Finney-Smith and maybe try to see if they can trade Bojan Bogdanovic and get like a draft pick back or anything like that and just still go straight and try to go out there and make the playoffs as a play-in team with the current roster. The one route I said I don't want the Nets team to do is the one I think they will do. But I don't know. Look, I just think that's the best cost. I think it works. I think it's the best option. I think it gets the best of both worlds. But what do I know? But anyway, there you have it. I'm wrapping up this episode. Let me know what you guys think about everything, about what you think about this team so far, fourth through the season, a quarter through the seation. What you see from this Nets team, them being 10-14. I'm not going to do the what will the Nets do moving forward because they don't play that many games coming up, and it's just kind of silly. They're just a tough, fun team. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think about the Brandon Ingram trade. If you agree with me that is a trade that just makes sense, and if that's the package you would do, because I think it works. Let me know about what you guys think about everything. And until the next NetsBoy episode, which I'm not sure when it'll be, just keep your eyes open for it. And until then, this is NetsBoy signing off.